Greetings, Calvary Watch Care members. This is Sister Means with you for another episode of Greenleaf Season 2, Episode 15, 2x2. A lot's going on with this episode. So let's start with the charity storyline because that's quick and easy to get out the way. The opening scene is with Bishop and Sophia dancing, and they're practicing for the cotillion. Grace is watching, and it's a very beautiful scene, and Sophia's impressed with his dancing abilities and speaks upon that to her grandmother as she enters into the living room. And she agrees with Sophia. Sophia has to go off to school, and Bishop promises to be ready to dance anytime she's ready to practice. So Lady Mae comes in to talk about Marisol, the fact that she won't be in for the rest of the week because her husband's been hospitalized with a case of meningitis. And she's kind of thrilled about it because that means that Charity cannot go on tour. But Grace and Bishop kind of disagree with Lady Mae, saying, that doesn't necessarily mean that. It just means that we need to pull together as a family and work things out. And, Lady Mae's like, I'm not going to hear of it. Besides, who's going to take care of praise and worship? I said, well, Carlton's available. Lady Mae won't hear of it. And she tries to shut it down Lady Mae fashion. But Bishop says, I'm only trying to afford our daughter the pleasures that you can afford yourself. And with that being said, Grace definitely sees the tension between her parents, but no one speaks on it. Anyway, let's finish out the charity line. So Lady Mae is escorting or driving Charity, which I thought was an interesting scene because metaphorically speaking, she was driving the conversation, driving Charity, and being leader. She was in the driving seat. So she tells Charity it's not going to be possible. Marisol's husband's in the fight for his life, and she's not going to be able to take care of baby Nathan for you, and so you had no choice but to stay at home. And Charity's like, the worst is over, he's getting out the hospital in a couple of days, where are you getting this from? And she's like, look, the bottom line is that it's not going to happen for you. And so Charity's upset, so she tries to work out things with Jabari, but Jabari's like, look, we can't make any changes like that. There's too much involved, and if you're not able to take advantage of this opportunity, there'll be other opportunities. And she's like, no, I'm gonna make it work. So she appeals to her father. Her father says, look, I'll work it out. And he does. He goes to Carlton, and he has a conversation with Carlton, inviting him back as worship leader with full benefits. Carlton's resistant at first, saying that Calvary needs to be as open and inclusive as Triumph is before he can come back, because his husband won't allow him to do so. And they stand side by side, which makes Bishop think of his text for the service, Sunday worship service, as 2x2. And he convinces Carlton to come and join, saying that you have to partner with me so that we can chase the homophobia out of the church, pretty much. And Carlton does agree to come back. So that ends Charity's storyline. Let's move on to something more exciting, like Rochelle Cross, who shows up at the bishop's office at Calvary, and she's got another big check. And so he's like, what's behind the big check? What's going on with you? So bottom line is that she had some testing, and the oncologist is calling her into the office to discuss the results. He said it doesn't have to be bad news, and she says, but usually if it's good news, they just tell you over the phone. So she's a bit concerned. He decides to escort her to the appointment for moral support. Now, when Rochelle Cross was waiting for him, Corrine let the bishop know, but she tried to keep the door open, and Bishop insisted that the door be closed. So Corrine's been trying to play interference. This is so funny. So when they leave together, her eyebrows are raised that, the bishop is going out with Rochelle Cross. Sometime after they've left, Lady Mae comes to speak to the bishop. And Kerissa makes sure that she tells Lady Mae that he is out with Miss Cross. So he is in the reception area with Rochelle, and there's nothing about their interaction that appears to be platonic. It's very flirty, it's very intimate, and you know, he's there with her. He's saying that she is inspired. She was the first inspiration behind his sermon. So he was talking about Noah's Ark, the animals going in 2 by 2 or side by side at the time, and how God has made us to rely upon one another. And she put her hand in his hand and squeezed and said, "I really need you today." And that's when they called her into the office. So when she comes out, the message is favorable. No cancer. It's just that they believe that she's suffering from a condition with her kidneys as a result of the chemo treatments, and they want to monitor it. So she invites him to dinner, but he says he has to get back to the church. And she says, "Who am I to try to take up your day and your night?" And she says it flirty, and she's holding his hand, but she's walking away, but she's not really letting go of his hand. Really involved. Let's talk about the fact that Lady Mae summons Grace to her office with that crystal figurine of a dove. I say it's a dove because it's a Christian symbol, but it's some type of bird with the wings open. So Grace comes with the figurine in hand saying, "You've summoned me." And you know, basically Lady Mae is trying to get Grace to act as the outreach coordinator and figure a way to get Marisol's husband documented, because they found out the reason why he procrastinated is because he's not documented. He was afraid that the hospital would report him and then he would be deported. And Grace is on board to do what she can. Then she inquires if anything was going on between her mother and her father, and she said yes, but please focus on this so that will give me the joy to persevere. So Grace goes to follow up. What winds up happening is that we see a scene with Grace, Bishop, Rochelle, and immigration lawyer by the name of Warwick. Don't know if it's the same day or the next day. One of the major things I have is that they're not good in allowing us to know where the timeline of the story lies. But anyway, I'm not sure if it's the same day, later on in the same day or the next day, but whatever the case is, they are all meeting together to discuss Marisol's husband's dilemma. And Grace explains it. Bishop offers to sponsor him or take care of the finances. And then Rochelle Cross bats her eyes and pleads with him to take the case. Apparently, Ulrich is a friend of Rochelle's. And so he says, "Wow, a dynamic duo, how do you resist?" And for some strange reason, there was this very flirty look between Rochelle and Bishop. And they began to look at each other and smile. And Grace is like, she's looking like, what the heck is going on here? But she doesn't say anything. She's just looking like, you know, this is weird, this is strange, and this is happening before me, and he's flirting with someone that's not my mom type of look. Okay, so look who's coming for dinner. So we see that the relationship between Grace and Darius is progressing just fine. And she's getting out of his bed, getting dressed, getting ready to go home because she's a mom and, you know, she doesn't want to spend the night, all night out. It's not a good look. So she's talking about the dinner that he's supposed to attend so that her parents can get to know him better. And she's like, something strange is going on there. He said, well, whenever you're ready. And Apparently, she said she decided now was as good a time as any, because we see a scene where he comes, he has a bouquet of flowers for Lady Mae, he has a iTunes gift card for Sophia, and Sophia in turn gives him a playlist, a compilation of various gospel artists. So we're on the veranda. Darius is talking and sharing the story about his background and talking about the great love between his parents and how his mother didn't survive much longer after the father. Sophia responds, how wonderful that must have been. That's just so beautiful, because they had such a strong love that they couldn't live without one another. And Bishop remarked about, isn't it, I couldn't imagine having a love like that. And that was like, ooh, dagger to the heart, Lady Mae. I mean, I felt the pain. I was like, ouch. Really, Bishop? You had to go there in front of company? Like, seriously? Anyway, we don't get a full dinner scene this time around. That was like a pre-dinner appetizer waiting for dinner to be ready type of scene. So just enough that we could see that. That night, I believe, was the same night that she questioned him about Rochelle and what happened. He said, you saw Rochelle Cross? He said, yes. Did Corrine say she borrowed a big check by? I went out with her to offer her some spiritual support because she had to get the test results from her oncologist and she was fearful. And, and since you're not going to ask, I'm going to just let you know that she's fine. So we keep having those interactions, and then there's another interaction they have where they're getting ready for bed and he's telling her that Charity is going on tour, Carlton is going to be the worship leader. She inquires like, hey, who said? He said, I said. And just like many things in your family is now up for discussion. So it's really intensified. We see, I'm going to leave that for last, the confrontations between Bishop and Lady Mae. We're going to go over to Triumph and see what's going on there. Triumph, Deputy Mayor Leonard comes because he's going to run for mayor. The current mayor is not going to run again, and he wants to be the next mayor. And Basie was supposed to act as his spiritual advisor, but Basie is split. So he wants Jacob to take on the task. And in exchange, he's going to make sure that he's taken care of with all kinds of subsidies and grants and what have you. So Jacob says, send me what you had sent Basie. Let me take a look and see if we're on the same page, and I'll pray on it. Apparently Jacob decides to play ball, and he is going to go and attend this breakfast with Deputy Mayor Leonard. Before they attend the breakfast though, Leonard says, I need to dial in a message. Jesus great, church great, homeless great. Brother Leonard, God's man in Memphis, even better. Wait a minute, did dude just really elevate himself above Jesus? Anyway, he tells Bishop to lay off, not Bishop, Jacob to lay off of the gay talk because he doesn't want the constituents in the room to feel unease. They have their biases or what have you. He really doesn't care, but for the sake of the financial flow for the both of them, ease off that conversation. And Jacob hesitates, but he then agrees. Zora's examining her bruises. I don't know if these are new bruises or bruises from last week's episode where Isaiah had thrown her against the pillar, but she's got bruises on her arms, she's got bruises on her back, and she's examining herself as her mother knocks on the door. She quickly tries to cover her up, pretend she's folding up laundry. Kerissa's inquiring about her lack of participation in Mr. Dorsey's class. Now, everybody should remember Mr. Dorsey. Mr. Dorsey was a cute little dark-skinned guy that Kerissa used to have lunch with at Excellence every day. And you kind of suspected that there was a little bit more than lunch that was taking place, especially when she felt that she had to explain that since Jacob had just taken the position at Triumph, that she would probably be going out to dinner more or lunch more and more with her husband. It was just a very odd conversation. So it made me suspect there was something more than just two colleagues having lunch every day, if you know what I mean. Anyway, Dorsey's saying that Zora's not participating. Zora's like, what's the big deal? You're upset if I talk too much, and now that I'm trying to be mature and be focused, I'm talking too little. And so I don't know. There's nothing wrong. Everything's fine. So Kerissa lets it go for the time being, and she does a loving gesture rubbing on her arms. We see Zora turn towards the camera. We see Zora turn away from the camera, turn towards the camera rather, and you can kind of see a grimace on her face, but it gets past Kerissa. So Kerissa discussed the situation with Jacob, but Jacob's getting ready for the conference, and it leads Kerissa to do a sweep of Zora's room. She finds a condom. As she finds the condom, Zora enters the room. This leads into an exchange. And bottom line is, Kerissa says, hey, you're being irresponsible. This is not really smart. Zora retorts back that the fact that she's using the condom means that she's being responsible. Kerissa further offers the fact that she earned Jacob's respect by not having sex with him before marriage. And Zora replied in a flippant manner saying, did you? And she got smacked down. Kerissa apologizes, but says, there's a lot of sex to be had, but it's not a measure of a woman's worth, which was a very powerful statement. Jacob is off pitching his strong housing and job initiative, and he's coming up against opposition with Brittany Weaver. She's the only woman in the room, and she's the only one that's objecting to his initiative and finding every reason to vote for why it can't pass. They take it to a vote, she's outvoted, so she's really ticked off. And she said, well, I'm not in control, but the money is. And he says, no, wrong, God is. God's in control, and God's already told me that the city's going to pay for it. So in other words, he had looked at all this stuff that Deputy Mayor has offered Basie, and he's going to use that to his advantage. Shortly at a Sunday service where Joshua Nelson and Tasha Skanks perform a sermonic selection, we then have Jacob getting up and singing the praises of Deputy Mayor Leonard, and he ends with the fact that the Deputy Mayor was giving the church a $75,000 grant. Leonard looks shocked, but of course he's going to stand up and clap. And then you see Brittany, she is tight, honey. She is drawn so tight like she ate some lemons or something. She is just, like she's just angry that he's got this money. And she's the very last person to get up and stand up and try to offer some type of applause. So that was a funny scene. There's a scene where Tasha receives a call from Skanks indicating that, she's like, are you coming back? Trying to get him to come back. He says, that's not going to happen. She said, I'm never going to see you again, am I? And he says, do you love me? She said, you know I love you. He said, then don't trust the Greenleafs and make them pay. And she promises to do so. She tells Jacob that, and this was the last scene, she comes to Jacob's office and says, look, I cleared out my office for Kerissa to take over, but I'm going to stay on board because I believe in you and I'm here in any capacity that you need. Jacob says, thank you, all that wasn't necessary, but if you keep praising God and I keep praising God, we'll both wind up in heaven together. He escorts her out of the office. And before she exits, she looks back. Now, I don't know if she planted something, but something was very suspicious. So we know that if Tasha wasn't part of the original planning against the Greenleaf, she is now going to look for ways to bring them down. Alright, last but not least, we have the argument between Bishop and Lady Mae. So Lady Mae's like, are you ready to talk now? And he's like, look, bottom line is I know that you and Lionel had an affair. And I want to know when this went down. She said, that's not important. What's important is that when he asked me to go away with him, I said no and I stayed with you. And I didn't stay with you because you were perfect. I stayed with you because of all of this. So he's like, she's like, the reason why that happened in the first place is because he filled the pit that was left behind what you did with Mavis. So she knew about their affair. And he said, look, that was a one-time deal, and when it happened, I told you about it. And she's like, well, I was afraid that if I told you that you would hate me. He said, well, I don't love you, and I don't think he said, I don't love you now, and I don't think I ever will. And he goes to walk away from her, and she turns him around and says, can you really afford to give up all this? And he said, I don't know what this is. This struggle, this family, this fight. And she says, she tells him that's why I'm here, because of all this. I wanted you. I wanted our family. I wanted this. But he just basically walks away from her. So next week we're seeing previews. It looks like Isaiah has bumped and lost his head and goes all kind of crazy on Zora at the cotillion. And it's almost like the War of the Roses between Lady Mae and Bishop. So even though they're still being seen in public and what have you, they're still like really at each other. There is no partnership there right now. They are totally at odds, and it's uncomfortable because everybody recognizes that this is very awkward. But I think this was a great episode. I am looking forward to seeing what happens in this season finale. Until the next episode. Bye.